Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report, and coming up here on today's show, I have the top 10 players that I would love for the Las Vegas Raiders to target in round one at pick number 7. Before I get into today's show, though, hey, man, today's show sponsor, Manscape. If you haven't already, go to manscape.com, use code Raiders for 20% off the best male grooming products, not only for down there, but improve your beard game as well. So what I wanted to do here is I released a video probably 2 months ago, my original top 10 prospects that I thought McDaniels and Ziegler could potentially target. But you know what? I've watched more tape. I've got more research, and a lot has changed over those past 2 months. So it's time for a new updated list. Before I go from 10, work my way all the way down to 1, Jeremy Jugs and I, we're going to be live for the entire 2023 NFL Draft. Every single pick. I mean, it's like 24 hours straight of Jeremy Chugs and I breaking down every single pick, telling you how it impacts the Raiders, how it impacts other NFL teams out there. I don't want you to miss it. It's a hell of a time. And I got some sick giveaway items, so make sure you subscribe, man. Let's go to number 10 here on my list. It's Nolan Smith, and you're going to see some players that maybe I haven't talked about as much in length, but you'll kind of see why here in a little bit. Good edge rusher from Georgia. If you're looking for versatility, if you're looking for like a 3-down guy, this is him. He's a good pass rusher. He can stop the run, and he can drop back into coverage as well. I know that the Raiders for a long time have been looking for like this Swiss Army knife style of player. Well, guess what? That's exactly what Nolan Smith is. He's a great leader, a highly intelligent player. And realistically, when you go back and you look at a lot of the tape at Georgia, the one player flying all over the football field who continues to make plays is Smith. Unfortunately for him, he suffered a season-ending injury. I believe it was like right near, I'll say 8 games into 2022. But he does sound like he's going to be ready. He sounds like he's going to be looking forward to next season. I'm excited to see where Nolan Smith ends up falling. You can look at the numbers here from 2021 to 2022. Is he an undersized linebacker edge? Absolutely. But sometimes when you turn on the tape, you're like, this guy is just a good football player. And that's what Nolan Smith is. There's guys that are faster, bigger, stronger, but he always seems to be around the football. That's why he makes my list here at number 10. Let's go to number 9 now, Lukas Van Ness. The reason why I laugh with this name is because this is the one player that Alex knows. She's like, who's that guy that's carved like Hercules? Yep, babe, it's Lukas Van Ness, the edge rusher from Iowa. But just kind of like what I mentioned about Smith, this is another just really good football player. He lined up inside and outside with the Hawkeyes this past season. He has the great height, length, athleticism combination, and I'm not saying that Lukas Van Ness is going to be Max Crosby. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. But when Crosby, when he was coming out of Eastern Michigan, he was not this great athletic player that Van Ness is. But what Crosby did was he worked harder than anybody else. And he can bend. He could move like Gumby. I remember Mike Mayock saying that. But when you look at the comp from the height, length standpoint and the motor, you're going to see that in Lukas. Is he a better run stopper right now? Yes. And if you're going to draft somebody this high, he better be able to get after the quarterback. For Van Ness, though, I know he has the work ethic. I know he's going to put in the time. And if he can reach that ceiling, his upside is really, really high. Now, when you look at some of his numbers from a career standpoint, at Iowa, Big Ten football, 70 tackles, 19 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, and a pass breakup. I know that he is still a work in progress, but I'm telling you right now, if I was Van Ness, I would love to play next to Max Crosby. Coming in here at number 8, first quarterback, it's Will Levis. And when you watch the tape with Will Levis, one thing that I really started to try to do is watch the Levis tape before he suffered his injury this past season and then after, because realistically, these are two totally different players. Levis also has the strongest arm in this class, and if you haven't seen pictures of him recently, hide your kids, hide your wife, because that man is ripped up from head to toe. In fact, I can't even remember the last time I saw a quarterback that is as jacked as Levis is. Maybe it's eating the bananas with the peel, maybe it's the mayo and the coffee, I don't know. Whatever it is, it seems to be working. But the thing that I love about him is his quick release, and he is accurate on intermediate and long passes. What sometimes I get frustrated with Levis is it's the really, really short one, like that he just simply can't make. His mechanics need work. He struggles to recognize coverages. He is 24 years old, and, there's that debate. Well, if you're going to take a young quarterback with high upside, why not just take Anthony Richardson, who's 3 years younger? Personally, to me, I look at a guy like Levis, and then I think about what type of coach Josh McDaniels is. He looks at Levis, and he's like, I can make this kid what he can become. Whether I believe that or not, I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that the upside is clearly there. Would I want him to learn a year? Yes, absolutely, because he is not ready to start right away. Also, when you look at some of the players that he's played with at Kentucky, yes, it's a pro-style offense, but no disrespect to the Kentucky Wildcats. They don't have a lot of NFL talent on the offensive side of the football. They simply don't. So if you were to put Levis in a team-friendly or an offense that's like the Raiders, loaded with all this offensive talent, I'd be curious to see what he would end up looking like. Let's go back to the defensive side of the football because I'm going to be real with y'all. You're going to see another offensive player. You might even see 2 offensive players on this list. I want the Raiders to go defense. When you've spent the amount of money that they have on the offensive side of the football and free agency, I am begging, I am screaming for you to go defense. So now I'm going to go cornerback Joey Porter Jr. And yes, his dad has got NFL ties, obviously Joey Porter. He did not allow a touchdown as the primary defender on any of his 275 coverage snaps in 2022, which I get it, it's Big Ten football, but also that is pretty damn impressive. He is absolutely 100% only an outside cornerback. He's got size, he's a physical guy, and he's best in press man coverage, which is really important because I believe when you look at some of the signings that the Raiders did make in free agency, they are going to be a press man team, and they're going to try to be physical. He does get a little bit handsy sometimes on his routes, which I think could lead to some pass interference calls. And pass interference calls, both levels, are never a good thing, right? But in college, it's 15 yards. In the NFL, it's a spot foul, which that's a big-time difference. He's a Bakersfield, California kid, 27 tackles, no picks, 8 pass breakups last season for the Nittany Lions. But in coverage, this is what I love. When you're the main cornerback, right? Sometimes teams come at you, sometimes teams don't. But 49.6% coverage grade, completion percentage when targeted last year in 10 games. He allowed 143 yards, no touchdowns, 11 PBUs, and a pick. Porter was one of the most consistent, one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. He's got extreme upside. He's got long length. He's got everything that you're looking for. He needs to get a little bit better in his technique, but you're hoping that that will potentially come with time. Now, as I mentioned, today's show sponsor is Manscape, and even if you're a little bit sick like me, I bet you if you're still looking good, there's always a chance for you to get it in. Go to manscaped.com, use code Raiders, 20% off and free shipping. Spring is sprung, and our friends at Manscaped have the best tools for some spring cleaning. They've already helped you tidy up all the nooks and crannies of your body's basement, but this year Manscaped can help you get the perfect presentation on your beautiful face with the brand new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Make sure you look your best this spring by using code Raiders at manscaped.com. I was nice enough to put this link for you guys in the comments and in the description of today's video. There is a reason why Manscaped has been a sponsor on the Raiders Report now for like 2 years. Their products are great. Raider Nation loves them. If they didn't, they wouldn't still be here. It's really as simple as that. A lot of times people ask me, Mitch, how do you keep your beard game looking great? I use all of Manscaped's products. I love them. I love how easy, simple their products are. I love that I can use them in the shower. I love how easily rechargeable they are. And I'm not going to lie, it's a cool product. When you tell your friends, yeah, you use Manscaped, I get a few chuckles, especially from my dad, my Uncle Wayne, whoever it may be. But I love their products, and I will continue to stand by them, and I think you will too. Let's go to number 6 here on my list. It's Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech. I have thrown out this comp before, and it scares some Raider fans because Chandler Jones wasn't all that great for us last season. Tyree Wilson reminds me of a young Chandler Jones. He's long, he's lanky, and when Chandler first came out of college, he wasn't the premier edge rusher that you see right now. Chandler Jones is going to be a Hall of Famer, so if you're getting that comp, that's a pretty damn good thing. Before his Week 11 injury, Wilson led college football in quarterback pressure percentage, basically meaning 1 out of every 5 times he got after the quarterback, he at least pressured them. He's got great length. He wins with his hands. He's got a pretty good spin move. He does need, I think, a little bit more tools in the tool shed to win at the NFL level. He does play a little bit too tall sometimes, which scares me because in the NFL, it's all about leverage, right? If you're in the trenches, it's a leverage game. Wilson was able to win at college because he was just that much superior of an athlete. If he doesn't get better, he will struggle in the NFL. But obviously, I got him at number 6. I got a lot of confidence in this young man. 6'6", 275 pounds. Me being down here in the Dallas region, I know a few people close to Tyree Wilson. Says he works his freaking tail off, and I do think that shows up on tape. 61 tackles last season, 7 sacks, a forced fumble, 14 tackles for loss in only 10 games. He was a guy that filled up the stat sheet, and he looks good on tape. That's a win-win in my book. Let's now get into the top 5. I'm going to go with Peter Scarronski, and this might be an unpopular opinion because there's a lot of Raider fans out there that don't want the silver and black to take an offensive lineman. I honestly don't necessarily disagree with that. I am always a believer, though, that you got to be able to win in the trenches. But the reason why Skoronski is on my list here at number 5 is he's just that damn good. He is the best offensive lineman in this year's class. And when going up against AP-ranked teams last season, he allowed 0 sacks and committed 1 penalty in 480 snaps. So going up against the best of the best, guess what? He played well. Skoronski, he is labeled as an offensive tackle. He's labeled as an offensive guard. However, my only knock on him are the short arms. Is he 6'4", 315? He's a big guy. His footwork, excellent. High football IQ. He does everything at an extremely high level, which is why if you were in a pinch and you needed to put him out at tackle, I'd say F it, let's ride. But I do think he's going to be a player where he's a Pro Bowl, all-pro style of offensive lineman if he is an offensive guard. Last season, according to PFF, allowed 1 sack, 2 hits, 3 hurries, a PFF run grade of 81.7. He was also the highest graded pass blocker, according to PFF, at 93.0. Before I get into my top 4, some of you are probably wondering, all right, well, when are we going to talk about these 3 guys? They're not going to be on my list. And the reason why they're not on my list is because when I designed this show, it was players that I legitimately thought could fall to 7. There's just no world where I can create where Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, or Will Anderson fall to number 7 unless there's some off-the-field shenanigans, which, again, we'll talk about a prospect coming up here in a little bit. So for that reason, these guys aren't ranked, but, yeah, I would obviously have them at my top 3 if we were talking about potential trade-ups. So here's my question to you. Should the Raiders trade up for a quarterback? Give me a yes, give me a no. With all that being said, to me, the only 2 quarterbacks worth trading up for are Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. So if I'm telling you those guys aren't going to fall to you at 7, are you like, all right, McDaniels, let's make a move here, trade up and try to get one of those guys? Let me know. I'm going to be looking down in the comments. Speaking of a quarterback, let's go here with Anthony Richardson. The Raiders had a great dinner with him on March 29th. Dave Ziegler, Champ Kelly, they ended up going to his pro day. Richardson literally threw a ball that hit the ceiling. I mean, if you just want to create a insane quarterback on Madden, he probably looks a lot like Richardson. He's got the highest upside of any quarterback in this class due to his elite size, speed, athletic ability. He showcased all of that at the NFL Combine. Does he have outstanding arm strength? Yes. I mean, he's going to be able to throw a ball 75, 80 yards in the air. His mechanics are bad, and they are very inconsistent. I will admit, when I watched some of his tape at Florida, I was surprised on how many deep shots that they ended up taking. Like, he never really had a chance to work those intermediate routes, which I do think impacted his completion percentage. And if he were to play in a more pro style of offense, I do think that the Raiders would be an interesting offense to fit, though I would hope if you drafted Richardson, McDaniels would be smart enough to build an offense around Richardson instead of forcing Richardson into his exact offensive scheme. But the rushing yards, the rushing ability, his overall ability, and the comp to Cam Newton is why scouts are drooling over this kid. But let's not get it twisted. He's a huge, huge risk. But if it ends up hitting and you want to be able to compete with the Justin Herberts, Patrick Mahomeses, Richardson is definitely an intriguing prospect. There's no doubt about it. Let's go down to number 3 here on my list, and a prospect that I got to give some credit to Graphic Raider. I remember I did a show with him 2 months ago, and he's like, you're going to fall in love with Devon Witherspoon. Watch more tape on him. And I was like, all right, I'll start watching more tape. Well, the more and more tape I watch, the more and more I love this young man here out of Illinois. And he's number 3 on my list for a reason. Cornerback is a huge need for the Raiders in this list. Not only judges based off how talented a player is, but it's also based on overall team need. Very, and I mean very intelligent player. That shows up on tape time and time again. And a tone center at the cornerback position. Raiders, when I think of the great Raider defenses in the past, and don't get me wrong, you can't take heads off like they used to, but he's somebody who's not afraid to hit you. I will admit my biggest knock on him for fitting the Raiders, I look at him as being more of a zone cornerback because he does lack that speed to be able to run with guys, but tough, not afraid to tackle, and that, I'll tell you what, one of the things that I loved about Rocky Ya-Sin was same thing. Tough, physical dude, built a little bit different than what you see some other cornerbacks looking like. At 6'1", 180, he even still has plenty of room to build up, bulk up a little bit. You put him in an NFL weight room, he adds another 10 pounds of muscle. He's going to be a scary cornerback. 42 tackles, 3 INTs, 14 PBUs. Last season with the Illinois, what's their nickname? Fighting Illini. I was going to say that, but it sounded a little bit weird. 34.9% completion percentage, 206 yards allowed. He is a dog. He is a baller, but he is not my number one cornerback. Let's go to number 2 on my list. It's Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle from Georgia. I know that there's reports out there from Vic Tafur that say the Raiders have already crossed off Carter. They will not draft him. I will go back and I say any report you get from a beat reporter, take with a grain of salt, right? Vic Tafur said they're not trading Khalil Mack. He said they're not trading for Devontae Adams. He said they're not going to have Josh McDaniels as the head coach. All I'm saying is this. Would it surprise me if they took him off their board? No, because the off-the-field shit, it should scare the hell out of you. He did not finish his pro day, but I will always go back and I'll say this. I am a man who I will value tape over just about anything. And when you turn on the tape with Jalen Carter at 6'3", 300 pounds, he's the best player in this year's draft. The reason why he was the number one player on my big board was because I thought he was the best damn player in college football last year. But the off-the-field stuff, it's not good. There was a report that came out from Lions head coach Dan Campbell. It said that he talked to a former teammate of Jalen Carter, and that teammate was basically like, there is so much stuff that you don't know about him that you don't even want to know. Red flags. The Raiders cannot afford to miss on a player in round 1. Going back and you look at how many times they've missed in recent years, if you think that there is even a chance that he is a red flag and that he's not going to materialize, I don't think the Raiders can do it. I do have him number 2, though, still on my list because of the talent in town alone. He's a dog. Not just because he's from Georgia. He's a hell of a player when he's on the field. But coming in here at number 1 for the Raiders to draft at number 7, it's Christian Gonzalez. The more and more film I watch of Gonzalez, the more I love this kid. And when I did my first show 2 months ago about my top 10 prospects, Christian Gonzalez didn't even crack my top 10. But you know what I did? I went to the film room and I said, all right, why does everybody love this guy so much? He's got that desired blend of size, speed, and explosiveness. He's great press man corner. Well, guess what? The Raiders are going to run a lot of press man corner, and that's another reason why he's just skyrocketing up my list. He does still need to work on his technique, but to me, there are not many players that I watch, and I'm like, this young man can be a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. That's what he can be to me. He's 6'2", 201 pounds. You ever watch a player and you're like, their arms are so long that it just doesn't even look right? You remember, I'm going to go with an old throwback here, Antonio Cromartie. He was just a long-limbed cornerback. That's what Christian Gonzalez is, and I think that's the type of player that he can be. 51 tackles, 4 interceptions, 7 pass breakups last season with the Oregon Ducks. When targeted, he allowed 60.9% completion percentage and 495 yards. This year's cornerback class is extremely, and I mean extremely deep. So if you want to wait on taking a corner, I don't mind that idea either. But if you're not going to go after an edge, if you're not going to take a defensive tackle, if quarterback, let's say, isn't the route that you're going to go either, well, I do know that having a lockdown corner is very important in the NFL. There's no doubt about it. And for all those reasons is why I have Christian Gonzalez here at number 1. In terms of some other honorable mentions, I did put Paris Johnson Jr. on here because to me he is a top 15 overall prospect, though I don't know if the Raiders decide to go offensive tackle. Bryan Branch, he's the number 1 safety in this year's class, and it's really not that close to me. Bryan Bresee, Calijah Kancey, both other top defensive tackles. I have Bresee somewhere around like the 19th, 20th player, and I have Kancey somewhere in that mix as well. And then Michael Mayer, another very talented tight end who is in my top 20 prospects. So before I go, one more time here from 10, working its way all the way down to 1. Nolan Smith, Lukas Van Ness, Will Levis, Joey Porter Jr., Tyree Wilson, then Peter Scarronski, Anthony Richardson, Devon Witherspoon, Jalen Carter, Christian Gonzalez. So now my question goes out to you. Who are you hoping the most that the Raiders take at number 7? Not a trade up, not a trade back. You're on the clock at number 7. The pick is locked and loaded. Who you going with?